All right, I guess this is the remake of the video. I'll just start with Elena's in the cells group, cells right here. And then if I go to the group and then I look at the permissions for cells document entry, you can see here where it gives me the queue access list. There is no ready to pick in this list, and the reason is because it doesn't exist. And I'll explain why it doesn't exist, and I'll explain why something can be in a queue that doesn't exist. So to start with, a queue is just a batch in GP. In ZelsPad, they're called queues, and so in GP, they're called batches. In order for the queue to be checkable, so like if I wanted to give her access to it, it would be in here, and I'd have to check the box like so. Now, the reason it's not available for me to check is because it doesn't exist. Now, if a document's in a queue that doesn't exist, and I put a star in here instead of selecting what I want, so like, see how I can check these, or I can just erase this whole section and put in a star, then they would have access to everything even though it doesn't exist. But it has to exist for me to give permission to them. So I can't just give Elena permission to the ready to pick queue because it doesn't exist. Now I'll explain why it doesn't exist. So in here we have workflows for every document type. So in this case, we're worried about orders. So I'm just going to filter by order. Okay. And so there's these 5 right here. If I go to the school one, you can see that in the queue list of available queues, there is no plain old ready to pick. Like there's ready to pick Atlanta, ready to whatever, but there's no plain old ready to pick. But so that's why the queue doesn't exist. It's not in here, so it's not. If it has to be in this list for me to be able to see it, edit, and manipulate it. However, because batches in GP are made up, like if you go into GP and you want to create a batch, you can just throw in any name. The function still allow any batch to exist. So what's happening is there's a thing called waiting for product here, and someone who programmed this originally, which was probably Paula and Chad back in the day, or it could have been modified by Ryan or James, because all of those people have touched the workflow since then. The next queue right here says to put it in ready to pick. So we're telling it to put it in a queue, so that doesn't exist. So if I came down here, I can normally select a list of queues, see? And this was probably set before, because a long time ago, we used to only have one queue to pick. We didn't used to split it off by warehouse. It used to just be ready to pick. So this text has probably been sitting there since then, because otherwise someone would have came in here and selected it. Now you can type over it, and once I've typed over it, I can't even reselect it without typing in ready to pick again. So I'm just going to close this, not save it, and just show you again. So what I'm meaning by that is that that's how it got into ready to pick. Elena's stuff was in waiting for product. The release for picking was pushed, and it went to ready to pick. So it went into a queue that I can't control the security access for technically, because it doesn't exist in the list of queues. So now that that's said, there's some more issues here. The reason that something should never hit ready to pick is because it should hit this split cells document first. This eval says it's going to activate this ready to split plugin. Down here you can see eval when is in this queue. So when it's in the waiting for product and the release for picking is pushed, the split cells pad plugin should fire. And when that fires, it should put all the items in the appropriate warehouses, so therefore it should never hit ready to pick. Now, school locker order looks like it's set up correctly, so it's working. It should work, theoretically. Technically, though, if someone opened up the split cells document window, it should pop up. Once it pops up, if someone hits cancel, it's going to go to ready to pick. It's not going to go to split. So it still could end up there, but it should get thrown somewhere else before it hits ready to pick. But so in this case, Elena was using a Jorgensen order. So if we go to the Jorgensen one and I click waiting for product, you can see that the plugin's not even selected, eval's not there, and the rules in this list are different. There's not even, the splitting isn't set up for ready to pick. Or sorry, not ready for pick, but for waiting for product. Like it's not even set to evaluate in that queue. So that's why when it was in waiting for product, it went straight to ready to pick. the split document stuff never even fired. So with that being said, if I look at all the other queues, it looks like each queue is almost set up a little bit differently with different things. Like, just they're all just a little bit different. And so there's some issues there, I guess. We need to, maybe make them all the same, or I don't know. If you guys don't care, I don't care. But there's definitely some inconsistency with these things. If I go to here and, so one solution would be for this to fix it correctly is to just delete this. Because if we deleted it and saved it, what would happen is when someone hit waiting for product and hit click to the ready release for picking, the split plugin would get triggered off, and it should do its thing, so it would go into the right queue. However, with it being blank now, it's not going to move it to the queue if it was canceled. So it would just stay in the same queue. So even though you push the button, the split plugin fired, they hit cancel or close the split plugin thing when it pops up, it would just stay in the same queue. It would never hit ready to pick. So that would be one solution. However, the new workflow that I've designed, or that all of us have designed, it wasn't just me, we don't have splitting warehouses, so all this would go away if that's ever implemented. So I don't know what you guys want to do, but there's definitely some inconsistency with these that need to be fixed, I guess. And so that was kind of like my question is how is stuff even getting into waiting for product? Because if I look through this list, nothing actually ever says to go to the next queue waiting for product, so someone's manually moving it there. So yeah, that's the end of the video.